Good afternoon, everyone. Apologies for the slight delay. Thank you for the people who still had the patience and are still in the room. Today's session is slightly different. It's a workshop, and it's a workshop by someone who I really admire and respect, and I've worked closely with for a long time. Um, and unlike most of the sessions which I just host, today's session is going to be one where I'm going to be interacting throughout. As I share spaces with my colleague and co founder at the Unknown Planet, Saurabh Vishwakarma. Saurabh has a string of awards to his name. He has filmed over 100 advertisement films for large conglomerates like Pepsi, Coke, all the big names that you know. He's also done a lot of promos for a lot of serials that you see, like Mahabharata. Saurav has also close to over 20 feature films under his belt and close to seven non fictional feature length films just with me. He realized that life had a lot of innumerable grace. It was a process that set him out on a different journey, on a where he became a bit calmer, a bit more patient. And as he witnessed life unfold in front of him, sometimes acting as a subtle catalyst, there was something brilliant that earned his lens. And soon his stories, because the people were sum total of his stories, were created as a part of it. This became his fascination for the stories. And then he went to film school, that is FTII in Pune, one of the finest in India, which opened up a pack of wonders. It was a deep process of understanding history, philosophy, music, painting, theater, literature, and went beyond just understanding people. It was a realization of the vastness of the universe. A film school makes you humble and makes you appreciate the art of other professionals, learning from them, about them, and taking on diverse cultures, languages, politics, society, interpersonal relationships, and so much more, Saurabh says. More than anything else, it's the diversity of his fellow friends and fellow classmates that gave him an even deeper understanding and gave his stories even a deeper resonance. Um, Soon, he had the great fortune of working with all formats of storytelling, from feature films, documentaries, commercials, song picturizations, shooting locations, and sometimes locations across the world. Traveling became a stimuli. Interacting with people became their art, feeling their culture, language, food, poetry, sociology was another step in finding the vastness of storytelling in the universe. Today, Saurabh says, I am the sum total of my parts, each time relishing my experiences and trying to add a bit of me in these stories that I try to convey. Every time trying to set the elements right, guided by the soul of the written word, wonderfully witnessing life as it unfolds, and then trim, filter, shade, maneuver or articulate for the experience and delight of my audiences. On this note, let's see what Saurabh's lens really does. So, Saurabh, please can you start your director's reel, please? Was a great show. And you can see how his lens captures light, play, his characters, and the very spirit of what he's trying to encapsulate. And on this note, we start what we would now like to say is the workshop session of how to tell your story. One of the key features that we have to do is actually find the soul of a film. And or the soul of the subject. And the subject always has a certain flow and a format. It has what we know as a hero's journey. The hero's journey takes an ordinary person to the extraordinary world, consciously seeking out the extraordinary, taking on challenging experiences, answering their own inner call to purpose and adventure, traveling with vision and intention, meeting challenges, taking on challenges, crossing the Lakshman Rekha drawn by normalcy, taking on the step to a zone called the unknown, taking on every boulder, every challenge, every brick path that is offered to him. And every experience leads to an inner transformation, which is reflected through meaningful conversations, where you take time to reflect and understand the meaning, and it changes you forever. And then you launch into purposeful action. This could be the story of any action hero, anyone, anywhere in the world. I'm going to let Saurabh Vishwakarma tell us about this one through his thoughts about the hero's journey and then through his films.
Yeah, hi. Uh, I would rather, Sonia, go slightly back, one step back, and talk about the relevance of stories. Why stories? And what
Perfect.
the power of stories. So once there was this experiment done by a journalist somewhere in America, and the purpose was to find the power of the storytelling. So he went around roaming on the streets around the world and collected about 100 items. The average price of one item would be, let's say, $1 a piece. And then he came back and he asked some writers if they would like to be a part of a significant study, which meant writing a story on each of these objects. After he got these stories on each of these objects from these writers, he had these 100 items, objects, and a story associated with every object. And then he put them on sale online on a certain platform. And as I said, each item was worth $1 a item. And the money then finally he collected from the sale of these items online was about $4,000. This is a real case study. I'll, so basically, what I mean to say is that everything has every object, every association has a bigger value to it once there's a story attached to it. We take another example, let's say. So we go and watch a Bond film somewhere, and we leave the theater with a feeling like I want to talk like him, I want to be bit like Bond, you know and one day you walk to a shop somewhere and come across a watch. It's Omega that resembles one Bond, the Bond was wearing in one of these movies, and you pay $10,000, up to $10,000 to put that watch on your wrist. And then you leave the store feeling more like Bond. So how is that possible? So apart from, one would say that it's about product placement and all, it's also about being affected by a story. So it's that, and then somewhere through this journey, and the study case study I spoke about, it's about being emotionally invested. So when you allow the audience to get emotionally invested in your story, it has a greater value. It is more significant. So, so good storytelling is about getting the audience emotionally in the story, and so when in our parlance, when we walk and we do our journeys and we pick real heroes, What we do is actually we go figure out a protagonist, let's say, and you make to begin with, you make your hero look like real, picking up from the ordinary, make him come across like us, all of us. Let the audience find its traits, which could be similar to them, and then somewhere you find his or her vulnerability. He's vulnerable. He's human, and that's what I call as relatability. We relate. We allow the audience to relate, and then you jump to the next. You travel with him. You travel that passage of time and his experiences, and then you see, and when he's pushed out of a comfort zone, he's exposed to challenges, threats, etc. You make the audience a part of the journey, and somewhere you also build suspense. You take the audience to the cliff. You create a word around, your the environment where your protagonist exists. You increase the audience's attention, and then you go back to your to protagonist, and as he tides over the pain and comes out sober, there what I see is that we try and make the protagonist likable, relatable. We also, through this journey, create trust. We create that bond. Uh, we also let the audience experience that grief that the protagonist going, the hero is going through. You create that empathy and make the audience feel humble in front of the protagonist. Like the audience would say that, empathy is the key words. Like, would be able to relate to his pain. He would at times feel like being in that environment where your protagonist is. So you create that kind of environment.
No, I think it follows the same format. You've just said it so much, much more better. You've actually invested the people into it. But now, having said that, can we go through your journey, your adventure, where you can share how you have found those stories? Can we start with Hindi Divas? Yash, can you play
Sure.
Hindi? Hindi.
भारत के माथे की बिंदी।
So I'm also assuming, but just for a slight, explanation's sake, a bindi has a ornamental connotation and honor that Indian women have. They wear a red, often red or black sometimes, or different color dot on their head, forehead. It's supposed to be glorifying them, and it's ornamental in nature. That's what a bindi is. Uh, we wanted to convey that Hindi is the national, or one of the national languages in India, and we were to celebrate this day called Hindi Divas, or the Hindi Day, the day when the national language or one of the national languages is celebrated in India. And we wanted to convey, the story to a hero. And as it would be obvious that this guy, this person, old man, is a caretaker. His job is an old fashioned somebody who is responsible. He has his modest job. So after the school finishes, he is the caretaker who would go across the entire school and figure out whether everything is right or not. His modest job, modest maybe earning, uh, from the looks of him, you would be able to know the socio-economic background he comes from. We wanted to convey the importance of this language and associate it with the hero. So this guy, there's this small little girl who's left. The mother hasn't arrived as yet to pick her, and everybody else has left the school. So it's his responsibility. So this guy, from the modest and humble background, responsibility as well. He takes care of the kid, but in his nature, an everyday thing for all of us or most of us, that we would like to fulfill our responsibilities to the fullest. Takes care of this girl, sends him off. He goes through the school. So not only through his act, as we see acts at through the film, we see that he's there. He checks whether all the lights are off, everything is in order or not, etc., etc. As he's about to lock this door, he comes across a table when the chalk pieces are lying around randomly. He just enters, stumbles on this blackboard, wherein somebody for the next day has written, I'll say this in Hindi, Hindi Divas ki Shubhkamnaएं, which means that best wishes for the Hindi day, the language day. And he stumbles, he sees that the bindi, the dot which completes the word Hindi is missing. So it's a nature of this hero or this modest person who rises up to the occasion and completes this journey and puts that dot, and only then this film is complete and we see that. And there's a voiceover which we couldn't hear from a very great actor and orator in the film industry. And he says Hindi, Bharat ke mate ki bindi, which means that that's a felicitation on the forehead of this country. So that's the sum total, very sweet, short film or a message conveyed through a modest somebody who rises to the occasion and becomes a hero. Basically, the core is that we allow the audience to get, as I said, invested emotionally in the story, and therefore, the audience, when the audience leave the film, they're emotionally charged. Something has moved within, and the message therefore has been conveyed. So that's the sweet short message. Sonia.
I think it's the message was so well conveyed in such short words, without the requirements of words, even visually, without actually seeing it, without actually hearing it, without even the music. It was completely understandable. You could understand the message right away. And I think that elevated the simple concept to a whole different playing field. Now, there's another film that I'd like to talk about, something that we've done together. Just give me a second while Yash loads up the film. Yash, can you put 17 Not Required Indian, the video that came on Google Drive?
जे भी है मैम, जे और वो भी हमारे हैं, सभी इधर भी हमारे थे। ज़मीन बेचकर ही भेजा था। ऐसा अब गलती महसूस हो रही है। अगर हम उन्हें ना बेचते और हमारे खेत भी बच जाते और वो भी जहाँ हमारे बीच होते सही सलामत।
70,000 रुपया दिया लेबर में काम करने जाने के लिए, मांग के लिया। मेरे में इतनी हिम्मत नहीं थी, मांग के लिया।
हमने सोचा था कि मगर पीछे थोड़ी बहुत कमाएंगे और बच्चों की अपनी लाइफ सेटल होगी। मतलब जो हमें प्रॉब्लम आई है ज़िंदगी में वो हमारे बच्चों को कभी नहीं आएगी।
हम उधर जाते थे, सुबह 4 बजे उठते थे, 5 बजे चले जाते थे काम पे, फिर शाम को 7-8 बजे आते थे।
हम लोग 10 घंटे काम करता था बराबर। कभी कभी काम ज़्यादा होता था तो 2-4 घंटा ओवर टाइम भी लगा था।
तक पगार नहीं मिला, उसको भी अभी इधर बैठा था कैंप में, उसको वो पानी भी नहीं मिलता है, बिजली भी नहीं दे सकता है, खाना भी बराबर नहीं देता है, तो हम लोग इधर क्या करता है? हम लोग इधर फंस गया तो कोई भी देखने वाला नहीं है।
दूसरा आदमी कोई और भी आ जाएगा कि मैं इमिग्रेशन से आया हूँ या कोई CID वाला लेके जाता है, उसको कंपनी को मालूम नहीं पड़ता कहाँ लेके गए, कहाँ लेके कब लेके गए।
ये पकड़ा से वहाँ पीछे बंदा हमको जो 1-2 ड्राइवर बोला क्यों ले जा रहे हो, बोला क्या हुआ है जो हमको क्यों पकड़ा है, बोलने का नहीं है, चुप लागे उधर लागे रात को खड़ा करना, उधर को दरवाजे का बस इधर देखना नहीं है, उधर ही देखो आप।
Thousands of Sikhs from the Midlands travelled to London this weekend to raise awareness about 17 men who've been sentenced to death in the United Arab Emirates.
It is only now when the judgment came that we came to know that he has been sentenced to death.
ਜਿਹੜਾ ਦਿਨੇ ਦੱਸਦਾ ਉਸ ਦਿਨ ਤਾਂ ਮੈਂ ਤਾਂ ਮੌਜੂਦ ਹੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀਗਾ। ਅੱਛਾ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਹ ਹੈਗਾ ਕੋਈ ਸਬੂਤ? ਮੈਨੂੰ ਸਾਰਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਪ੍ਰੂਫ ਹੀ ਦੇ ਰਿਹਾ ਸੀਗਾ। ਵਕੀਲ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਵੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਪਤਾ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਫਾਂਸੀ ਕਦੋਂ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ। ਜਿੱਦਣ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਫਾਂਸੀ ਹੋਈ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਉਦੋਂ ਵਕੀਲ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਹੈਗਾ। ਤੇ ਤੂੰ ਹੈ ਕਿਹੜੀ ਜੇਲ੍ਹ 'ਚ? ਮੈਂ ਸੈਂਟਰ ਜੇਲ੍ਹ 'ਚ ਸ਼ਹਿਰ 'ਚ।
They told me that we were made to stand for 6 days, not allowed to sleep. We were given electric shocks.
वैसे मेरा अपना पर्सनल आइडिया ये है कि हम 17 फैमिलीज़ या उनके जो भी जाता है इकट्ठे जाएं।
17 बंदे की तरह हुई।
एक ओंकार सतनाम करता पुरख निर्भव निर्वैर अकाल मूरत अजूनी सैभं गुर प्रसाद जप।
गवर्नमेंट तो ये चाਹੁੰਦੇ कि ਜਿਹੜੇ 17 ਪਰਿਵਾਰ ਹੈ ਨਾ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੇ ਇੱਕ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਦਾ ਪਾਸਪੋਰਟ ਬਣਾਇਆ ਜਾਵੇ। ਇਸ ਕਰਕੇ ਅਸੀਂ ਸਾਰੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਆਪਣੇ ਮਤਲਬ ਉੱਧਰ ਜਾ ਕੇ ਇੱਕ ਮੈਂਬਰ ਆਪਣੇ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਮਿਲਣਾ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਹਾਂ।
सोचे सोच न हो गई जे सोची लखवार चुप चुप।
मैं बस यही चाहती हूँ दुबई सरकार से भी कि प्लीज़ अन्याय कीजिए और इन्हें छोड़ दीजिए। 17 को 17 घर उजड़ने से आप दुबई सरकार ही बचा सकती है। अगर आप चाहो तो मुझे ले जाओ और फांसी दे दो। मेरे एक जाने से सिर्फ एक घर बर्बाद होगा, 17 घर तो नहीं बर्बाद होंगे।
हुक्म रजाई चलना नानक लिखिया।
Saurabh, this film was like looking for a needle in a haystack. You want to tell us how you
Uh,
found your protagonist and your story?
I would say, this was a life-changing, film for me, and thanks to you. And I would like to, convey to the audience that we were people, shooting commercials, advertisements, and feature films, etc. And once both, me and Sonia were in Dubai, and one fine day, Sonia comes across this email from the fraternity of journalists that she belongs to, and the subject was call for action, and which is when we get to know that 17 Indians have been sentenced to death by a Sharjah court, and the case has been on for about a year and a half, and nobody in India, and she being from the journalist fraternity, even she didn't know, which is when we realize the scale of the situation. And me and her, we traveled to the embassy in UAE to figure out, and it was like, about 40 minutes we were just calling on the helpline number, and the recorded voice said that, all the lines are busy, and if you want to connect, please leave a message or write a mail to this email ID. And then, since I was traveling, Sonia is based out of Dubai, and I'm in India generally, which is when I realized that, what if one fine day I'm traveling to a foreign land and I go missing, and I go missing for a year and a half? What happens to my parents? There's no clue. And then we tried our resources, and I would say that, thanks to Almighty, probably we are more equipped, more aware, and we traveled to India and we tried all of our resources, and we still had a tough time trying to figure out who these 17 people were back in India. And which is when we met these 17 families. And these people were ones who had mortgaged their lands, and or maybe sold their lands and sent their sons to foreign land to be able to, one, cover the expenses they have incurred, or the loans they have taken, and then provide for a better living for the family back home. And here they are, trapped, in languished in the jails. And the family members, it was so humbling that, we figured out there were 17 families, and then we figured out, uh, on the basis of accessibility, the articulation, etc., etc., figured out three protagonists. And one was them, for example, this lady that opens the film with, and she is she, the father, who is languished in jail, has not seen one of the kids because the wife was pregnant when the husband left. The other guy, the other person, the old man, he used to be a teacher. He stays in a rented place in some remote district in Punjab, and we had taken loans. He lost his eyesight. He was an English teacher, and there are no students coming to him now. There was another story, similar story, and a lot of other stories to say, so to say. And how these people, sorry.
Uh,
So,
yeah,
so you
sorry,
want to
sorry,
add
my
something?
bad. I was really curious why we decided. Why do you think we picked up on these two? What about them? So there were 17 of them. Each one of their story was more painful than the last. What made us instinctively, both you and me, pick up on these two? What about these guys gave us the courage to say, okay, this is where we can write a full film? We're not just writing on a film, we're writing our lives with it. We'll be arrested, we'll be beaten. I remember going with a broken arm from Delhi after being beaten at the national airport. So we had decided to risk our lives. But what was it about these two characters that made us risk our life?
Sonia, sorry for the audience. We figured out that they are willing to do everything to get there. Meaning, it was so unreal even that in the one of the shots, the lady even says that I'm going to offer myself to the UAE government, my life to them, because she somewhere randomly heard that, in Sharia law, life is for life. So, like she says that, I'll offer my life, to get these guys released. The uncle that we met, he was really on the edge. He didn't have money to even feed his family and the wife, himself and the wife. So they were the people who were like, these were the people who had, let's say, nothing to lose. And we found that people who have nothing to lose are the bravest. They have the stake is, that challenge. They can change any challenge. They can weather any storm. So you want to add something to it, Sonia?
You hit the nail on the head. These were people who had lost everything that they ever stood for. They lost their sanity, they lost their lives, they lost everything. And they were fighting for one very strong thing. And the strong thing was the freedom. For them, it was about what is right, what is wrong. Both of them came from middle class backgrounds who had their moral compass, who knew what they were doing. They were extremely strong and straightforward. And this gave us big hope. Even when you can see when we were talking to the politicians, the others were mumbling, asking for money, begging for money. These were the two who said, no, we want our family members back. And they refused to kowtow, they refused to bend. The fact that they did not want to bend for money, which would have been a big savior in their lives, was one of the biggest things um, that got us to want to kind of back them up. And the second thing was their willingness to go to any lengths to save their family. Another, while Ranjit Kaur, the lady, had actually wanted a better life for her family and her kids because her husband was not doing anything, Pyare Lal was desperate to even send the second son after sending the first son to Dubai. And we wondered about it. Why would he do it? And then we heard why he wanted to do it. Both the kids had been stuck to drugs. It was Urta Punjab for him in the truest sense of the word. All his village was eroded by drugs that would come out from the Golden Triangle and kill the kids. For him, it wasn't about his business. It was about saving his kids. So here was one kid on death row, and here was he who wanted to set the second kid. The dichotomy, it was an absolute dichotomy. This is what got me. And here were two people who weren't only, if you see the film, you see they're not only fighting for themselves, they fought for change. And I think that's what a real hero's journey is. And throughout their journey, I think Saurabh got it beautifully, where their changes would be apparent, where they went from strength to weaknesses to moments where they say, please take my life, to moments of desperation, to where they were thrown out of their family. One was riddled with debt, and they stood through it out. That is the heartwarming way of telling a story. Capturing those fine moments, kind of making a string of moments. A beautiful, beautiful garland of moments is what stories are all about, not necessarily book. It's also about how they gain new knowledge and share this knowledge. It's also about the sense of responsibility, and it's also about the return home. So I found this for me. What do you feel, Saurabh?
One more thing about about such kind of storytelling is that you have to be very patient. You have to be invested, and you have to find the right strings, and then you have to just stick around to just observe the life as it unfolds in front of you. And many a times, in fact, very often in this story, particularly this film, a lot of magic has happened that we could not even script, we could not foresee. And there were a lot of twists and turns. We just had to be needed to be patient. And then there were characters which got added on its own, and there was a different energy. For example, there was this fine human rights lawyer, and so there are also a lot of grays which find very interesting strands, in storytelling. They provide a soil for germination of these characters, and they're a part of the environment, which is very important. For example, this human rights lawyer now Kiran Singh, and the Sardar we come across in the film, and he was so charged, and he had taken this on himself that he would represent this case in front of the lawyers or the courts of UAE. He even got some power of attorney from all of them. So like he made it a point that all 17 families across Punjab and two families from Haryana, he would reach out to them, get the papers signed. He represented them. He tried to, in fact, legally he can't, but then he tried to. He got access, and then somewhere is that feeble character, that influence of lower middle class politics that seeps in people got insecure, and probably somebody filled them, and then he got defeated as well. Defeated in the sense that some families backed out. So in fact, one way of looking at it would be that, he is probably irrelevant. But then failures are also an essential part of storytelling. They provide you with that drama, which is very important in the course of storytelling. You want to add to it, Sonia?
I love the bits about the grays and the way it throws shades. I also love the fact that when you have a protagonist, you have an anti-protagonist also. And so we have the good and the bad. And sometimes, like you have to do, you have to patiently tell stories. Now, as we're at the end of the session, let's draw it to what we can say that when you tell your stories, how does it have to be? You have to find out, according to me, you have to find that moral compass that guides you through, and then start your story based on that. The one driving force that has changed you forever will be where your story is starts. What do you feel, Saurabh?
I think that as storytellers, or let's say as artists, uh, whatever we represent or whatever we present, let's say, format, whatever is our output has to have a strand of our lives, that the personal feeling that we have gone through, that has to be conveyed. It might not be the very relevant feeling that happens through the course of storytelling, or the plot that is happening in front of us. It could be through our history as well, like the lives we have personally lived as or experienced, and all that has to get conveyed. If it's not personal, I don't know. For me, I don't know if it could be that touching, a presentation. So I would say yes. For example, in this film, I personally, I'll be very honest, I personally thought that if one fine day I am in some foreign land and my parents would not, come to know about me for a year and a half, what would happen to them? Coming from a very middle class conservative Indian family, I know that they would die. I, you know, so I couldn't sleep for 2 days. So it's very important for an artist to get affected, and only then, that pain, that empathy would get translated in your films. That is my personal take about filmmaking. Yes, you have to get invested, you have to be patient. A lot of times you can't script, whatever the final output would be, but trust me, through my certain experience, whatever comes out of this process is magical. It's very hard to understand. Sonia?
I'm trying to share, struggling to share some lines on the chat to kind of say that whenever you're mapping your story, try and see that you keep these parameters. I'm sorry that it doesn't allow me to share more than 25 characters or a few lines. So I'm just sharing it in bits. But whenever you plot your story, please plot it along these lines. And no matter how you, whether it is a product you want to sell, or whether it's you that you're trying to sell, a concept or a belief system, or most of us, several of us here are not for profits or social initiatives or impact entrepreneurs. For us to tell our stories, it is about these things. It is about telling us why we did this. Why? The why is as important as the how, and it's as important as the where and why now. So, and this all gets layered when you put this on a first person perspective and share this with yourself. Thanking you all for coming. I can see it's become a room full now. Thank you very, very much, Saurabh, for sharing your time and your thoughts.